In my family, there was always a scoreboard I never knew existed until it was too late. My younger brother was the golden one. You know the type, the kid who got the standing ovation at every holiday dinner just for showing up. My parents never said it out loud, not exactly, but you feel it when you're growing up in a house like that. The way my mother's eyes lit up differently when he walked into a room, the way my father leaned forward in his chair. When my brother talked about his plans, like every word was worth writing down. And then there was me, the older one, the responsible one, the one who quietly paid her own way through nursing school while they co-signed my brother's car loan and called it helping him get started. I don't say any of this to sound bitter. I'm saying it so you understand why I did what I did, why I said yes when I absolutely should have said no. My brother, I'll just call him that, my brother, got engaged to a woman named Paige. She was fine, pretty, polished, the kind of person who remembered everyone's coffee order and made it feel like a personality trait. My parents adored her immediately. She came from a family with money, and I think that was the part they loved most, if I'm being honest. The engagement party was at my parents' house. I showed up with a gift card and a bottle of wine, sat in the corner and watched my mother cry happy tears. She had never once cried at anything I'd accomplished. I finished nursing school. Nothing. I got promoted to charge nurse at 31. Nice, honey. My brother got engaged to a woman he'd known for 14 months. My mother sobbed into a dish towel. After everyone left and I was helping clean up, my father sat down at the kitchen table with me. He had that look on his face. The one that means he's about to ask for something while making it sound like he's offering you an opportunity. He told me they wanted the wedding to be special. Really special. Paige's family had offered to contribute something, but they were covering the honeymoon. The venue my brother had his heart set on, some restored farmhouse in the Hudson Valley, had a price tag of $40,000 just for the rental. Add catering, flowers, photographer, band, open bar, hotel room block for out-of-town guests, and they were looking at somewhere north of $90,000. He slid a number across the table to me on a piece of paper, like we were negotiating a deal. $60,000. That was my share, he said, my contribution to the family. I stared at it. I had $62,000 in savings. I had spent 8 years building that account, working double shifts, picking up PRN hours at a second hospital on weekends, eating lunch in my car instead of the cafeteria to save $12 a day. That money was supposed to be a down payment on a house, my house, the first thing in my adult life that would be entirely mine. I said I needed to think about it. My mother called me the next morning and said that Paige's mother had mentioned how much it would mean to have the family come together for something like this. She said the word together 4 times in one sentence. She said she knew I was always so independent and maybe this was a chance for me to really be part of things. I said yes. I told myself it was a gift. Freely given. I told myself I wasn't keeping score, that family doesn't work like that I loved my brother and I wanted his day to be beautiful. I wired the money to my parents' joint account, which they were using to manage all the wedding vendors. I have the transfer confirmation still saved in my email. $60,000 on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and I went back to work the next morning and put in a 12-hour shift and didn't tell a single person. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in October. By August, I had been to 2 dress fittings for bridesmaids. I was in the wedding party standing right behind Paige's college roommates in a sage green dress I had paid $280 for. I had attended the bridal shower, the bachelorette weekend in Nashville, which cost me another $600 between the hotel and activities, and the matching sash I was expected to wear without complaint. I had addressed 240 envelopes by hand because Paige wanted that personal touch. The call came on a Thursday night, 3 weeks before the wedding. My mother. She started with the weather. She asked about my work schedule. She asked if I was eating enough, which she never asks unless she's stalling. And then she said, and I remembered every single word because I have replayed it so many times, it's practically worn grooves in my brain. She said, "Sweetheart, we've been talking and we think it might be better if you sat this one out." I thought she meant the rehearsal dinner. She didn't mean the rehearsal dinner. She meant the wedding. I sat on my kitchen floor. I don't know why I sat on the floor. I just sort of slid down the cabinet and landed there, holding the phone against my ear, listening to my mother explain that Paige's extended family was very traditional, very image conscious, and that some of her relatives were quite prominent in their community. And that she paused here. I remember the pause. It felt like a door closing. I had been looking a little run down lately. Tired. She said I looked tired. She said my hair had been kind of flat and that at the engagement party someone had asked if I was doing okay, and she and my father had felt embarrassed. I said very quietly, "You're uninviting me from my brother's wedding because I looked tired at a party 6 months ago." She said it wasn't like that. She said they just wanted everything to be perfect for Paige's family. She said I could watch the live stream. There was a live stream. They had set up a live stream for me. I asked about the money. I said it plainly. I asked what happened to my $60,000. She said the money was already committed to vendors, that it wasn't like she could give it back, that I was being selfish for even bringing it up at a time like this, and that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be supportive of my brother, even if I wasn't there in person. I hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time. I'm a charge nurse. I have held the hand of a patient who was coding while simultaneously directing a team of people and staying calm enough to be useful. I have driven home after 16-hour shifts and cried in my driveway for 10 minutes and then gone back in the next morning. I am not someone who falls apart easily, but I sat on that floor for a very long time. Then I got up, washed my face, and called my best friend. Her name is not important. What's important is that she answered on the second ring and let me talk for an hour without interrupting me once. When I was done, she asked one question. She said, "Do you have documentation that you paid?" I did. She said, "Then you have options." I didn't sleep much that night, but by morning I had made some calls. I'm a practical person. I think in systems. When a patient is deteriorating, you don't panic. You run the protocol. So I ran the protocol. I contacted the venue directly. The farmhouse coordinator, a woman who had been remarkably pleasant every time I'd spoken with her during the planning process. I explained that I was the primary financial contributor to the event and I had some questions about the payment structure. She confirmed that the deposit had been paid and the remaining balance was due 2 weeks before the event date. I told her I wanted to update the payment authorization on file. I told her there had been a change in the family's financial arrangements and that going forward, any charges would need to come directly from the family, not from the account I had previously authorized. I gave her the information she needed to make that change. I did the same with the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band. I did not cancel anything. I want to be clear about that. I did not ruin my brother's wedding out of spite. I simply removed myself as the silent underwriter of an event I was no longer invited to attend. Let the family who was so concerned with appearances figure out how to fund them. I did not tell my parents what I had done. I spent the weeks before the wedding in a strange quiet. My mother texted a few times, cheerful updates about the centerpieces, a photo of the cake tasting, a message asking if I wanted her to mail me a piece of wedding cake afterward. I kept my responses brief. I did not tell her what I had done. I did not tell my brother either, though part of me wanted to. I wondered if he even knew I had been uninvited, or if our parents had handled it without his knowledge. I still don't know the answer to that. The Saturday of the wedding, I worked a day shift, on purpose. I asked to pick up hours I didn't need because I knew that if I sat in my apartment watching a live stream of a party I had paid for, something in me would break in a way that might not fix itself. So I put on my scrubs and I went to work, and I was useful and competent, and I did not think about it. I got off at 7:30 in the evening. I checked my phone in the parking garage and I had 40 missed calls. 11 from my mother, 2 from my father, 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I sat in my car. I looked at the calls. I did not listen to the voicemails immediately. I drove home first, changed my clothes, made tea, and then sat at my kitchen table and pressed play. My mother's first voicemail was confused, something about the venue, a problem with the card. By the third voicemail, she was crying. By the sixth, she was furious. The gist of it, pieced together across 11 messages, was this: 2 hours into the reception, when my parents went to authorize the final payment to the venue, the remaining balance that was due that evening, the venue coordinator informed them that the payment authorization had been updated and that the card on file for the family was being declined. The coordinator, whose name I later learned was Helen, apparently handled it with remarkable professionalism. She brought my parents into a side office. She explained calmly that the primarily authorized payer on the account had removed themselves from the payment agreement 3 weeks prior. My father, according to my mother's frantic message, had demanded to know who the primary authorized payer was. Helen had shown him the paperwork. My name was on it, my name on $60,000 of paid deposits, my name on the original signed contract as the party responsible for the balance. And my father had apparently turned to my mother in front of Helen and said loudly that this was impossible because I was not well and had not been in a good place, and they had asked me to step back from the wedding for everyone's sake. Helen, bless her, had apparently said very politely, she seemed quite clear-headed when I spoke with her. The unknown number was Paige's mother. That was a surprise. She left a 3-minute voicemail. She was not yelling. She was speaking in a very controlled, very precise voice, which somehow felt worse. She said she had been under the impression that the wedding had been fully funded. She said she was extremely disappointed in how the evening had unfolded. She said her daughter deserved better than this kind of family chaos on her wedding day. She also said, and this was the part that stayed with me, she said she would be contacting her own financial advisor on Monday to discuss the situation because our family had contributed to the honeymoon under the assumption that all other costs were handled. I listened to all 14 voicemails. Then I put my phone face down on the table and drank my tea. My brother called at 9:15. I answered that one. He was quiet for a moment after I picked up. Then he said, "Did you know this was going to happen?" I said, "I knew I paid for your wedding and was then uninvited from it." Another silence. He said, "I didn't know they did that. I didn't know you were uninvited. I thought you had a work thing." I believed him, actually. My brother is many things, but I don't think he's cruel. I think he just doesn't ask questions when things are handled for him. I think that's been true his whole life. I said, "There's a transfer confirmation in my email. $60,000, March 14th. If you want, I can forward it to you." He said he didn't need to see it. He said he already believed me. I asked him how the rest of the night had gone. He laughed a little, a tired, hollow kind of laugh, and said that Paige's mother had cornered our parents at the reception and that it had not been pleasant. He said Paige was upset. He said their parents were insisting that I had sabotaged the wedding and that I needed to be confronted. I said, "I didn't cancel anything. I just stopped being the person responsible for paying for things I wasn't allowed to attend." He was quiet again. Then he said, "That's fair." Those 2 words did something to me. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone in that family to say something that simple and true. Just, "That's fair." Not an apology. Not a promise to fix anything. Just an acknowledgement that what I had described was, in fact, fair. We talked for another 20 minutes, about nothing important. About a restaurant we used to go to as kids. About a dog we had once. I don't know why we talked about those things. I think we both just needed to remember that there was something real between us before all of this. The confrontation from my parents came 2 days later. They drove to my apartment, which they have done maybe 3 times in the decade I have lived there. My mother had clearly been crying recently. My father was doing the thing where he holds his jaw very tight and speaks in a measured voice that he thinks sounds authoritative. They stood in my living room and told me that what I had done was vindictive and immature. that I had humiliated the family in front of Paige's relatives, that I had ruined what should have been the happiest day of my brother's life, that I owed them. And here my father actually used this word, restitution. I let them finish. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my email and showed them the transfer confirmation. March 14th, $60,000, my account to theirs. I said, I would like that back, please. My mother said that wasn't possible, that the money had been spent, that I knew that going in. I said, I knew that when I thought I was paying for a wedding I was attending. I didn't know I was paying for a wedding I would be watching on a live stream because you were ashamed of what my hair looked like. My father started to say something about family and sacrifice and perspective. I said, I've already spoken to an attorney. That stopped him. I hadn't, actually, not yet, but I had an appointment scheduled for Thursday. I had documentation. I had the transfer record. I had a text from my mother, sent in August, that said, and I had screenshotted it at the time without knowing why, we really need you to be flexible about the guest list. It's a numbers thing. I had the vendor agreements that listed me as the financial party. I had it turned out quite a lot. My father's jaw unclenched slightly. My mother started crying, which she deploys strategically, but I had run out of responses to it. I said, I don't want a legal battle. I don't want to spend the next year fighting about this, but I am not going to pretend that what happened was acceptable. You took $60,000 from me. You told me to watch my brother's wedding on a laptop, and when someone asked where I was, I have no idea what you said, but I'm guessing it wasn't the truth. My mother, through tears, said they had told people I was working, that I had a shift I couldn't get out of. Not rehab, not a breakdown, just work. I suppose that's something. My father, after a long silence, said that perhaps there were things that could have been handled better. That is the closest I have ever gotten to an apology from him in 33 years. I told them I needed some time. I told them I wasn't closing the door, but I needed them to understand what they had done before I could think about what came next. I told them I was not angry in the way they expected me to be angry. I wasn't explosive. I was just tired. The kind of tired that sits in your bones and doesn't shift easily. They left. I stood at my window and watched their car pull out of the parking lot. The attorney meeting on Thursday was useful. She was straightforward about my options. Small claims wouldn't cover the full amount. Civil suit was possible but would be a long process. And the strongest leverage I had was the documentation, plus their clear acknowledgement via voicemail that they intended to use funds I had provided. She said the best outcome was often a written agreement outside of court. She helped me draft a letter. My parents signed a repayment agreement 6 weeks later. Not the full $60,000, I accepted $45,000, structured over 3 years. My brother matched it with $15,000 of his own, which he offered without being asked. I did not expect that. I don't know where he got it. I didn't ask. That was 4 months ago. My brother and Paige came to dinner at my apartment last month. Just the three of us. Paige brought a bottle of wine and didn't make it weird, which I respected. We talked about their plans, their new place, their puppy who was apparently eating the baseboards. It was normal in the way that things sometimes become normal after something terrible. Not erased, just absorbed. My parents and I are in a place I would call cautious. We speak. I went to Sunday dinner twice in the last 2 months. We don't talk about the wedding. I think we all understand that there is a version of the relationship available to us that is smaller than what it was, and that smaller is still something. I still don't own a house. The savings account is being rebuilt slowly. I pick up extra shifts. I eat lunch in my car sometimes. But I kept the email, the transfer confirmation, March 14th, $60,000. Not because I'm still angry. I keep it because it is evidence that I loved my family more than I loved my own security, and that for a while they took that for granted. And I keep it to remind myself that I am someone who, when pushed past a limit I didn't even know I had, found out she had options. That she was not, in the end, someone who could be made invisible. I watch the light stream of nothing now. I think about the moment my father slid that number across the kitchen table, $60,000 written on a piece of paper like it was a casual suggestion, and I think about how I said yes. Not because I was naive, because I genuinely believed that doing something good for someone you love is its own form of dignity. That's not stupidity, that's a value system. And the thing about having a value system is that other people can take advantage of it right up until the moment they can't. What happened to me wasn't random. Every step of it followed a logic, even if it was a painful one. My parents had spent decades teaching me without words that I was the capable one, the one who didn't need things, the one who would figure it out. So when they needed something enormous figured out, they came to me. And when they needed someone to disappear quietly so the party looked right, they came to me for that too. The cause of all of it was the same belief they'd always held, that I would absorb whatever was asked of me and ask for nothing back. The effect was a Thursday night phone call and me sitting on a kitchen floor holding 60,000 reasons why that belief had to stop being true. What I did next wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that because I've turned it over in my mind enough times to know the difference. Revenge would have been calling the caterer at midnight and telling them to cancel the shrimp cocktail. What I did was remove my name from a financial agreement for an event I was no longer part of. That's not cruelty. That's just accurate bookkeeping. There's a kind of clear-eyed thinking that only becomes available to you when you stop trying to manage other people's feelings and start dealing with actual facts. The fact was, I had paid. The fact was, I had been told not to come. Those two facts could not coexist without consequence, and I was the only person in the situation willing to acknowledge that. I used to think that being good meant being endlessly available, that love looked like sacrifice without limit. I'm not sure where I learned that. Probably the same place most people do. Somewhere between watching one parent defer to the other and being told that keeping the peace is the same as being kind. It isn't. Keeping a peace that costs you everything isn't kindness. It's a slow erosion of yourself, and eventually there is nothing left to keep peaceful. What I know now is that integrity, real integrity, the kind that holds up when it's tested, requires you to be honest about what things cost, not just financially. All of it. The double shifts and the missed down payments and the bridesmaid dresses and the Nashville bachelorette weekend and the 240 hand-addressed envelopes. At some point, you have to be willing to say, this is the ledger, this is what is real. And then you have to be strong enough to act on it, even when the people you love are standing in your living room calling it betrayal. My brother said, "That's fair." 2 words. I carried them for weeks, because the bravest thing someone can do in a family like mine is to look at an uncomfortable truth and call it by its right name instead of smoothing it over. He's still learning how to do that. I think we both are. I don't have my house yet, but I have something I didn't have before, a clear understanding of what I will and won't absorb for the sake of belonging somewhere. That knowledge cost $60,000 and one very long night on a kitchen floor. I'd say that's a steep price, but I'm also not sure I would have learned it any cheaper.